When the galaxy's greatest army mistook humanity for easy prey, they made their final mistake. Out of the void came one ship, Revenant, and war became vengeance. Humanity didn't conquer. It became a reminder that could never be erased. Even after victory, they didn't rule. They watched, and the stars knew. If memory fades, the fire returns. Because humanity can be destroyed, but never forgotten. Stay with us if you want to find out how the story ends. And don't forget to subscribe. The Zealer fleet hovered in silence. Hundreds of their massive warships drifted in formation across the void, their sleek, organic hulls pulsing with faint bioluminescence. For centuries, the Zealer had ruled the Orion sector with calculated brutality. No resistance ever lasted long. Their ships were grown, not built. Their weapons biologically integrated into their vessels like claws on a beast. No species had withstood them for more than a cycle. Until now, a beacon pulsed across every Zealer command node, interrupting fleet-wide operations with a single unauthorized signal. At first it was dismissed, until it repeated. Then it was isolated, examined, decrypted. The message was simple. Warning, a human warship is here. The battle will never be the same. On the command deck of the Zealer flagship Varash, High Admiral Vorka narrowed his many eyes at the display. His tendrils twitched in confusion and disdain. It had to be a joke. The humans were a fledgling species, barely capable of planetary organization a few cycles ago. Their ships were primitive. Their weapons, crude. But reports had been coming in. Patrol groups, missing. Outposts, gone. Convoys, shredded. Entire wings of the fleet, annihilated in seconds by a vessel with no identifier, no transponder, and no matching design in any Zealer archive. Admiral, another transmission. One of his officers hissed, its fronds curling with unease. It's from the human ship. Play it, Vorka ordered, voice as cold as vacuum. A burst of static, then a voice. Deep, calm, human. This is the UNS Vengeance. You have two choices, retreat or be erased. Silence followed. No species had ever spoken to the Zealer like that. None had dared. Trace it, Vorka growled. Now, I want that ship destroyed. But deep in the root of his mind, past the pride and rage, something stirred. A feeling the Zealer had never known. Fear. UNS Vengeance drifted like a ghost among the wreckage of a Zealer war wing. Her angular hull, matte black and faceted for light absorption, gleamed faintly under the rays of a dying sun. Human warships didn't breathe like the Zealer. They didn't grow. They were forged, cold, brutal, unforgiving. Vengeance was humanity's answer to centuries of silence. On her bridge, Captain Elias Rourke stood with arms crossed, eyes locked on a tactical display of the remaining Zealer forces regrouping ahead. The enemy was pulling back, forming tight defensive spheres, adapting. They're not running, Commander Ava Sinclair said beside him. Still think they can win. Rourke exhaled through his nose, a smirk flickering across his scarred face. Then we'll educate them. The Zealer had learned quickly that humanity didn't wage war like other species. They didn't broadcast intentions. They didn't follow predictable doctrine. When pushed, humans didn't retreat. They evolved. Admiral Vorka's flagship is anchoring the center of their defense, Tactical Officer Bishop reported. Big one, 20 times our size. Heavy bioplasmic armor, bristling with plasma arrays. Sounds like a fair fight, Rourke said. Open a channel. Seconds later, the Zealer command feed connected. A guttural, wet voice oozed through the speakers. Human captain, you will surrender. You cannot win. Rourke didn't blink. Your fleet said the same thing. He paused. They're dust now. There was a silence. A ripple of uncertainty in Vorka's next breath. You invaded our colonies. You slaughtered our people. Rourke continued, voice lowering to a near whisper. Now, Admiral, you learn what happens when humans go to war. He cut the transmission. All hands, he said. Battle stations. Vengeance surged forward, her thrusters flaring as her main batteries powered up. Railguns the size of trucks spun to life, humming with kinetic potential. The Zealer formation reoriented immediately, their flagship's energy signature spiking as a pulse beam began to charge. Incoming, Bishop called. From the center of the enemy fleet, a beam of emerald plasma shot across the stars, wide enough to cleave a cruiser in half. But Vengeance was already moving, pivoting on maneuvering jets, slicing a hard arc through space. Brace, Sinclair shouted. The beam grazed their shields. The ship groaned. Power flickered. But Vengeance held. Shields at 70%, Bishop confirmed. Return fire, Rourke ordered. With a roar, Vengeance's rail guns discharged. Hyper-accelerated tungsten slugs ripped through space, slamming into Zealer cruisers with the force of meteor impacts. Bio-armor cracked. Flesh metal ruptured. One enemy vessel exploded in a cloud of chitin and plasma. They're bleeding, Sinclair said. But the Zealer weren't done. Torpedoes incoming. Multiple gravitic warheads. Countermeasures. Flares and jammers burst from Vengeance's flanks, throwing off several projectiles, but 3 still hit home. The blast rocked the ship, sending consoles into a flicker storm. Shields down to 35%. Hull breaches on decks 4 through 6. Too much heat, Rourke muttered. We can't take more of this. He turned to Sinclair. How close can we get to their flagship? She hesitated. At that power output? It'll swat us like a fly. Only if we don't finish them first, Rourke said, his smile returning. Sinclair's eyes widened. You want to board them? No, he said, voice like steel. I want to take their ship. Silence fell. It was madness. But it was human madness. All hands, Rourke said into the ship-wide comms. Prepare for assault. We're taking the fight to them. Vengeance burned toward the enemy like a dagger. The Zealer flagship loomed ahead, grotesque, organic, armored like a living mountain. Tendrils lashed out, plasma turrets roared. But Vengeance danced, dodging fire, weaving through death, closing the gap. 10 seconds to contact. Sinclair shouted. Breaching array ready? Rourke asked. Charged. Fire. The breaching cannon roared. A beam of condensed energy smashed into the Zealer hull, vaporizing a hole wide enough for a lander. Bodies and wreckage streamed into space. Launch teams, Rourke ordered. Pods shot out like bullets. Inside each, Marines readied their gear. Pulse rifles. Armor. Blades. Inside one of them, Rourke and Sinclair locked eyes. You're with me, he said. Wouldn't miss it. And then the pod struck. Clamps locked. Doors hissed open. And humanity stepped into the heart of the beast. The air inside the Zealer flagship was foul. Thick. Wet. Breathing. The walls pulsed like muscle tissue, veins of green bioluminescent energy tracing patterns through the corridors. It wasn't a ship. It was a body. And humanity had just driven a spike into its heart. Captain Rourke moved first, boots squelching against the moist organic floor. His rifle tracked the shadows ahead, finger ready to pull. Behind him, Commander Sinclair mirrored his steps, calm but coiled like a spring. Their squad, 10 Marines clad in armored exosuits, spread out in a tight, silent formation. Every step deeper made it worse. The air clung to their skin, laced with chemicals their filters couldn't identify. The walls exhaled slow gusts of heat. The ship wasn't just aware of them. It was responding. Stay sharp, Rourke whispered into his comms. This thing's alive. It'll fight like it. Ahead, the corridor widened into a junction, organic arches above, neural strands trailing the floor. Then a low, wet gurgle echoed from the dark. Movement. Contact, one Marine called. The wall shifted. Zealer warriors burst forward, sleek, eyeless, armored in natural chitin, their multi-jointed limbs ending in claws and bone blades. They didn't scream. They simply lunged. Gunfire erupted. Rourke fired in controlled bursts. High-velocity rounds punched into the first warrior, sending it crashing into a wall in a burst of black-blue ichor. The corridor became chaos, blades clashing against rifles. Claws against steel. A Marine went down, dragged screaming into the floor where living tissue reabsorbed him like he was never there. Hold the line, Sinclair shouted, her rifle hammering shot after shot into the swarm. Rourke ducked, rolled beneath a slashing claw, and drove his combat knife into the throat of a charging Zealer, twisting until it fell limp. Then, silence. Corpses lined the floor, human and alien alike. Clear, Bishop called, panting. 3 Kia. 2 wounded. Rourke nodded once. Patch them up. We keep moving. Sinclair checked her HUD. Bishop, direction? The tactical officer frowned, scanning. Structure ahead. Big. Central. Looks like a command cluster. That's our target. They pushed on. The deeper they moved, the more the ship resisted. Walls twisted behind them, warping to close the path they'd come from. Pulsing fluid leaked from the ceilings. At times the corridors themselves bent subtly, disorienting navigation and scrambling their orientation sensors. It's trying to confuse us, Bishop muttered. Let it try, Rourke said. But then the walls opened. A second wave of enemies emerged, but these weren't like before. They were bigger, slower, covered in thick armor plates. Their limbs bristled with bone weapons and venom-laced whips. One of them growled, not in rage, but in amusement. They brought the big ones, Sinclair muttered, locking her last magazine into place. Fire, Rourke shouted. They opened up again, but their rounds ricocheted or simply lodged into thick flesh. One Marine tried to flank and was impaled mid-step, his suit folding in on itself as the whip pierced his chest. We need heavier firepower, Bishop yelled. Grenades flew. The first blast dropped 2 of the brutes, their thick skulls cracking open like split stone. But 3 more advanced, slower, crueler. We're not winning this, Sinclair said through gritted teeth. Not in a straight fight. Rourke's eyes flicked to the command map. We're 20 meters from the Nexus. We take it. We take the ship. Or die trying, Sinclair said. Only one way to find out. Move. Rourke barked. They retreated under fire, dodging claws, pushing wounded forward. The corridor widened into a massive chamber, a pulsating heart of living tissue and energy, with a towering control spire at its center. The brain, Bishop whispered. No guards. Because the ship still didn't believe they could do it. Then let's prove them wrong, Rourke said, stepping toward it. Then the walls screamed. Tendrils, covered in barbs, unfurled from the ceiling and lashed toward the team. One Marine was yanked screaming into the biomass. Another was slammed into the wall so hard his armor crumpled. The ship's fighting back, Sinclair shouted, diving behind cover. We have to overload it, Bishop shouted. How? Rourke barked, dodging a snapping tendril. Neural relay junction, Bishop said, sprinting to the spire, jacking a plasma cutter into a pulsating mass of tissue. If we hit this with enough force, it'll trigger a systemic collapse. How much force? Bishop didn't look up. More than we have. Sinclair ripped a grenade from her belt. Wanna bet? You'll never make it out in time. She smiled, blood on her face. Then I'll run fast. No, Rourke said, stepping forward. I do it. No time to argue, Sinclair snapped, already moving. She shoved the grenade deep into the relay cluster, primed it, and turned. Run, she screamed. The squad sprinted, ducking and weaving past snapping vines and collapsing walls. Behind them, the chamber erupted. A wave of fire, shrieking metal, and alien matter surged through the command center. Rourke hit the deck just as the blast wave reached him, then silence. A second later, the tendrils stopped. The walls stopped pulsing, and the ship went still. Rourke pulled himself up, coughing. Around him, the survivors stirred. Bishop scanned the chamber. Neural activity, 0. We did it. We killed the brain. The pounding on the doors outside, where the Zealer still waited, ceased. Rourke keyed his comms. Vengeance, this is Rourke. Enemy flagship is down. I repeat, it's ours. Static. Then a disbelieving voice. Holy hell. You just stole their flagship. Rourke grinned through the blood and smoke. Damn right I did. Outside, in orbit, the surviving Zealer ships hesitated. For the first time in their history, they saw something they didn't understand. A human ship, flying their own colors. The war had changed. And the Zealer knew, finally and completely, humanity wasn't prey. The UNS Vengeance hovered in orbit, surrounded by the smoldering remains of the once invincible Zealer war fleet. Where once there had been precision and unity, now there was only disarray. Enemy vessels drifted off formation. Some powered down completely, others maintained a cautious distance, unwilling to approach the horror that had just unfolded inside their command vessel. The humans hadn't just destroyed the flagship. They had taken it. On the bridge of the Vengeance, chaos turned to a tense, disbelieving calm. Engineers scrambled to stabilize the reactor, damage teams sealed breaches, and tactical feeds lit up with enemy withdrawal vectors. The Zealer were falling back, slowly, carefully, like animals circling a fire that had suddenly learned to bite. Captain Elias Rourke stood at the command window, the burned and half-collapsed silhouette of the Zealer flagship visible across the black. You're certain it's ours now? He asked, voice hoarse. Commander Ava Sinclair, helmet under her arm, leaned beside him. Bishop confirmed. Neural control is dead. No remaining biofeedback. They tried to purge the core after we hit the relay. Failed. The ship accepted the kill, and us. Rourke didn't look away from the dying ship. Then we're not just holding it. We're in control, Sinclair said, her smile faint, but full of something raw. They built ships to think. They never imagined we'd kill the brain and jack him manually. A pause. Looks like this one just got reassigned. The comms officer turned in his seat. Sir, we're getting comm traffic. All Zealer frequencies. Translate. The officer's hands flew across the console, converting the alien tones into something the AI could render. Then it came through croaking, broken, and very much not victorious. High command compromised. Flagship, lost. Human resistance must be reclassified. Not prey. Not primitive. Adapted. Contagion. Rourke raised an eyebrow. Contagion? Sinclair nodded. That's what we are to them now. Not an army. A virus. They're not wrong. A low chuckle passed through the bridge. It wasn't triumph, it was the sound of something far more dangerous. Momentum. Deep inside the captured Zealer ship, renamed UNS Revenant, reconstruction began. Human engineers in sealed suits worked to strip the worst of the living systems and rewire interfaces with modular Dominion-grade controls. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't clean. But it worked. Even in death, the Zealer tech pulsed with intelligence. Weapons could be controlled. Life support systems, once tuned for cold-blooded, sulfur-breathing monstrosities, were slowly being converted to human-safe levels. Rourke oversaw it all personally. This wasn't just salvage. This was symbolic. The Zealer had ruled this region for centuries. They didn't lose battles. They didn't lose ships. And now humans were operating their flagship like it was just another addition to the fleet. That alone would echo across the stars louder than any broadcast. And yet, Rourke knew better than to assume it was over. He gathered his command staff, Sinclair, Bishop, Comms, Engineering, Intel, inside the main strategy dome aboard Vengeance. The holographic display showed the wider warfront, multiple systems lit with conflict, red pulses indicating Zealer's strongholds still active. This was a tactical victory, Rourke said. One ship, one fleet. But they'll be back. They don't care about pride. They care about control. We just challenged their grip on this sector. Sinclair folded her arms. They're going to hit harder. And dumber, Bishop added. They're angry. That makes them predictable. Rourke nodded. Exactly. We use that. We want them to overcommit. I want them paranoid. I want them spending so many resources defending everything that they leave the real targets exposed. He brought up a map of the Zealer subspace relay network, vital communication lines running through buried transmitters on moons, planets, and hidden beacons. These, Rourke said. We cut their voice next. What about Revenant? Sinclair asked. A pause. Rourke glanced at the ship's biosignature, still fluctuating under human control. We keep her. We fly her. Let them see her on every battlefield. Let them feel her guns pointed at their own. Sir, the comms officer interrupted. We're receiving a long-range, encrypted signal. Not Zealer. Human signature. Origin. Earth. The room went still. No one had heard directly from Earth Command in months. Not since the UNS military had gone fully dark to run the long war from the shadows. Rourke stepped forward. Put it on screen. The hologram blinked, then resolved into a stern-faced woman in a black command uniform. Her insignia bore the crescent sword of the High Strategic Council. Admiral Mariana Kess. Earth's voice of war. Captain Rourke, she began. Your capture of the enemy flagship has shifted the strategic landscape. The Council has authorized the next phase. Her expression didn't flicker. We are going to dismantle the Zealer. Not just militarily, but culturally. We will break their supremacy myth by showing the galaxy that they can bleed. You have proven you're capable of more than resistance. Now we offer you command of Task Force Echo. Rourke's jaw tightened. With Revenant at its center? With Revenant as its spearhead. She leaned forward. You will not defend. You will not retreat. You will not negotiate. A pause. You will infect them. The transmission ended. Rourke turned to the crew. The decision had already been made. Prepare for deployment, he said. We just became the nightmare they thought we couldn't be. Far across the sector, on a Zealer shrine world, high priests gathered beneath a cathedral of bone and biometal. News of the flagship's loss had already spread like wildfire through their hierarchy. The words Revenant and Human were now bound together in their psionic memory spires. And in the dark, a new prayer began, not of reverence, but of warning. For the first time in Zealer memory, they had no prophecy for what came next. Only fear. The campaign that followed would be remembered in hushed voices across 100-star systems. Not as a war, as an infection. Under the command of Captain Elias Rourke, Task Force Echo moved like a virus into the heart of the Zealer Dominion. At its center flew the UNS Revenant, still breathing, still bleeding, but now enslaved to human purpose. Every battle it appeared and spread panic before a single shot was fired. Because the Zealer didn't believe in resurrection. And yet their dead flagship had come back with a new voice. And it spoke in human weapons and uncompromising fire. System after system fell. Not in grand sieges, but in calculated strikes. Subspace relay stations collapsed in coordinated sabotage operations. Supply worlds went dark after precision strikes from stealth craft. Listening posts were found empty, their crew vanished, and their walls painted in a single phrase, burned into metal in English, translated by AI into every known dialect. You started this. We'll finish it. In the command dome aboard Revenant, Rourke stood before a glowing map of the sector. Dozens of red markers blinked out with every passing hour. The Zealer were retreating, not in defeat, but in confusion. The machine they'd expected to crush had grown teeth and no longer fought for survival. It fought to unmake them. Commander Sinclair stepped up beside him, her eyes tired but focused. Forward Scout confirms it. System Tyrannies is abandoned. No fleet. No defense grid. They're not even trying to hold it. They're pulling back, Rourke said. Centralizing. Or panicking. Both. He looked out the viewport. The Revenant floated just ahead, tethered to Vengeance by an umbilical link while repairs and integration upgrades continued. Its silhouette was monstrous, almost grotesque. Its alien skin still writhed in low pulses, but the colors had changed, from sickly green to a new pattern, red, with lines of cold white. It was adapting, becoming something between, something new. They fear it, Sinclair said, following his gaze. They should, Rourke replied. They built it to be invincible. Now it flies under a human flag. That's not a weapon to them anymore. That's a shame made manifest. Moments later, the bridge AI pinged. Incoming transmission. Unauthorized source. Zealer encryption. Level 7 priority. Put it on, Rourke ordered. A single figure appeared. High Admiral Vorka. Burned. Scarred. And seething. You twist what you do not understand, the alien growled. You desecrate the flesh of gods. Rourke didn't respond immediately. Then he leaned forward. You desecrated our skies the day you landed on our colonies. What did you think would happen, that we'd die quietly? You want surrender? You'll find it written on the inside of our bullets. You will not survive this war, Vorka hissed. We're not trying to survive, Rourke said. We're trying to end you. He cut the signal. There was nothing left to say. On the edge of Zealer space, the final phase began. Task Force Echo launched simultaneous strikes across 5 systems, destabilizing their border defense grid. Revenant led the assault on the fortress world Korthar, where the Zealer had retreated to consolidate power. Orbital defenses activated within seconds, but they weren't targeting the Vengeance. They were targeting their own flagship. They were trying to destroy the Revenant. Yes, they'd rather kill it than see it fly for us, Bishop muttered, fingers flying across tactical readouts. Won't matter, Sinclair said. They waited too long. That ship belongs to us now. The battle began without warning. Zealer cruisers unleashed volleys of plasma, lashing space with ribbons of green fire. But the Revenant didn't dodge. It didn't hide. It pushed. Its guns thundered, massive spinal cannons integrated with human targeting arrays, firing kinetic slugs wrapped in phase disruption fields. Ships shattered. Defense stations imploded from within. Then the Revenant did something new. It screamed. Not through weapons. Not through sound. Through signal. A pulse burst from its core, an echo of the flame, now reborn in biotech horror. It wasn't a language. It wasn't a command. It was defiance incarnate. Across Zealer command systems, hallucinations began to manifest, impossible images of Earth's war, of colonies burning, of Marines storming biohalls. It was impossible, the AI insisted. No such visuals had been transmitted. But every Zealer ship saw them. And some turned back. Others self-terminated. Sinclair stared at the readings, stunned. They're hallucinating. It's psychological warfare baked into the ship's structure. Residual memory from the neural network, Bishop said, awestruck. The Revenant remembers. And it's making them remember too. Rourke just nodded. Let them remember. By the time Korthar burned, the Zealer line had fractured entirely. The once proud masters of the Orion sector were in freefall. Their broadcast relays fell silent. Their high temples, once protected by fleets, now stood exposed, their sacred biomass rotting under the glow of orbital bombardment. And still, the Revenant flew. Every system it entered changed forever. Not just tactically, psychologically. The message was clear. You cannot erase what you created, but we will show you what it becomes. And in dark corners of Zealer space, something unthinkable began to happen. Zealer defectors. Not many. Not openly. But a whisper here, a signal there. A message from a rogue priest. We saw your fire. We wish to understand. Humanity didn't respond. Not yet. Because the war wasn't over. But it was no longer a question of survival. Now, it was about what the galaxy would look like after. And for the first time, the Zealer weren't shaping that answer. Humans were. The Orion sector trembled beneath the boots of a species it had once dismissed. The Zealer were in retreat. But retreat was too clean a word. What they faced now was collapse, systemic, structural, cultural. Their hierarchy, once so absolute it bordered on religion, fractured under the pressure of a war they could no longer comprehend, let alone control. The humans weren't just winning battles. They were rewriting what it meant to fight. In command centers across Zealer space, confusion reigned. Communications were breaking down. AI nodes reported false positives. Entire military colonies went dark not because they were attacked, but because their command chain self-terminated under the weight of the Revenant's presence. They had tried to kill the ship. Now they whispered about it like it was a god. The Revenant didn't just destroy infrastructure, it shattered belief. And it wasn't alone anymore. From hidden shipyards deep within Sol-controlled space, Project Dominion Phase 2 was activated. Humanity's engineers had done more than reverse engineer the Zealer's organic technology. They had surpassed it. The first of the new hybrid dreadnoughts emerged from Jupiter's shadow, sleek, plated in carbon steel and grown neural plating. Their hulls weren't just armor, they were thinking exoskeletons. Their AI cores didn't obey commands. They anticipated them. Each one bore a name like a challenge, judgment, attrition, silence, redemption, and all of them followed Revenant into the deep. The war had entered its final phase. Task Force Echo expanded into Task Group Crucible. No longer a fleet, now a movement. Rourke, promoted to Sector Marshal, still commanded from the bridge of Revenant. But the shape of the war was different. He no longer needed to tell the galaxy what was happening. The Zealer did that for him. Fear became the greatest weapon in humanity's arsenal. Systems surrendered before the fleets arrived. Zealer civilians turned on their warlords. Entire planets defected, not out of ideology, but out of instinct. Predators know when something worse has entered the ecosystem. Rourke stood before the stars and saw their lines cracking. "They're bleeding out," Sinclair said, watching sensor reports from 6 sectors at once. "Not from our strikes, from their own collapse." "That was always the goal," Rourke said. "You don't win wars like this by conquest. You win by becoming a force of nature." And now the galaxy believed. On Zealer Prime, their cradle world, panic bled through sacred architecture. Their high caste assembled deep within the memory vault, surrounded by living databanks and pulsing tendrils of history. The chamber was built to outlast extinction. It had never prepared for irrelevance. High Priest General Casca, blind and ancient, faced the gathered council. "They are not merely warriors," he said. "They are vengeance incarnate. Our fleets remain," another said. "Our core systems are still ours." Casca turned slowly. "For now." Then the walls pulsed, light spreading across the veins of the temple. A new signal entered the chamber. Human. Live. Surrender. One word. Broadcast across their core network. From Revenant itself. It wasn't a demand. It was a statement of inevitability. And it echoed across every channel and every dialect. "You cannot uncreate what you've taught us. You cannot unfire the first shot. You cannot erase the consequences of waking humanity. Not anymore." The final campaign lasted 12 days. No planetary sieges. No drawn-out occupations. Only black ships appearing in the skies above world after world. Only silence. And surrender. And sometimes destruction. Because not every system was given a choice. Some had funded the invasion. Some had hosted the first landings on human colonies. Some had experimented on prisoners long before war was declared. For those planets, no mercy came. Only the flame. On the last day, Rourke stood on the bridge of Revenant and watched as the last Zealer dreadnought disarmed itself. Its weapons powered down. Its crew, telepathically linked, broadcast one collective message. "We have seen what you are." Sinclair sat beside him, her armor scratched and scorched, helmet in her lap. "They're done," she said quietly. "They are," Rourke replied. "But we're not." He tapped the console and brought up a star map beyond Zealer space. Unclaimed systems. Abandoned relic worlds. And somewhere, far beyond even those, the edge of the unknown. "There's more out there," he said. "You think they're watching?" "I think they always have." He leaned back. "And now they know we're ready. The war was over. At least, the part of it that had a name. The Zealer, once the architects of fear, the undisputed apex species of the Orion sector, no longer held command, territory, or belief. Their ships, if they remained, flew with transponders disabled and lights dimmed. Their temples were silent. Their war chants forgotten. But the humans didn't build empires from their victories. They didn't establish dominions. They didn't install governors or subjugate the surviving systems. They simply moved on. Because Earth had never intended to rule. It intended to demonstrate. In the aftermath, the galaxy whispered the name of Revenant as a curse, a warning, a myth. On every edge of known space, where governments had grown bloated and arrogant, stories spread of a black ship once grown in the biofactories of the oppressors, now flying for the very species meant to be exterminated. And those who still dreamed of control? They listened closely to the silence. Because where Revenant flew, systems remembered. Rourke stood once more on the command deck, but this time not over a battlefield. Instead, the map before him was diplomatic. 15 star systems, former Zealer vassals, had voluntarily opened talks with Earth Command. Not in fear. In reverence. Sinclair watched the channels open. Alien envoys appeared, hesitant, bowing in language and protocol. "They're not coming to surrender," she said. "No," Rourke answered. "They're coming to belong to something that survived the worst. Because humans hadn't conquered. They had endured. And in doing so, they become something unshakable. An anchor in a storm. The Council of Earth, the real one, hidden behind layers of classified black site operations and AI-guarded servers, met in secure silence. The question before them was not whether to build an empire. It was whether to stop it from happening. Because humanity wasn't pushing outward anymore. The galaxy was pulling in. They debated for weeks how much to allow, how to maintain balance, how to prevent their military from becoming what they had just destroyed. And in the end, they issued a directive broadcast only once and never repeated. "We are not rulers. We are memory. We do not govern. We remind." And so the Concord fell into place, not as a galactic power structure, but as a warning beacon. A pact between systems that remembered what happened when the powerful abused the weak. A treaty written not in laws, but in scars. At its center was a single article. If one rises too far, we call the vengeance. Not a ship. Not a fleet. An idea. On the outer edge of known space, long beyond Zealer maps, the black ship drifted. Revenant had no orders. She had no master. But her AI, rebuilt from human code and Zealer instinct, still ran its protocols. She monitored the stars. She studied quiet systems for signs of aggression, of silence weaponized, of history repeating itself. And when she found it, she moved. No fanfare. No demand. Just arrival. And sometimes that was enough. Ships powered down. Treaties were rewritten. Leaders stepped down without being told. Because the memory of the flames still burned in the void. Rourke retired. He never returned to Earth. He settled instead on a moon where gravity was light and the sky was always dark. Some said he carved messages into rock for no one to read. Others claimed he'd uploaded himself into the Revenant's core, becoming the thing he commanded for so long. None of it mattered. Because every child born in the Orion sector learned the story of the humans, not as monsters or saviors, but as the consequence. When a race is pushed too far. When patience runs out. When survival becomes identity. You don't get empire. You get fire. And fire does not negotiate. Decades passed. The Zealer disappeared from the galactic stage, their influence reduced to remnants scattered across dead systems and abandoned citadels. Most drifted into isolation, some seeking redemption, others hiding from the memory of Revenant. No one claimed to follow them. No one rebuilt their flags. But the universe, vast and ancient, didn't stand still. New species rose. New alliances formed. And already, new arrogance festered. The warning that had become a law, the memory of what humans had done, began to fade in distant systems, beyond the old battlefields. Some called the stories myths. Others, propaganda. A tool humans used to stay relevant. Until a fleet vanished. Then another. Scout ships sent to the far reaches of the Perseid Rim reported gravitational anomalies, regions of space where physics fluctuated, where time desynchronized, where voices were heard inside sealed suits. And then those scouts stopped reporting altogether. The Concorde sent Revenant to investigate. By now, the ship no longer required orders. It had evolved beyond even Earth Command's projections. It monitored its own missions, curated its own objectives. The AI core, somewhere between synthetic algorithm and something eerily conscious, processed events and patterns humans no longer fully understood. Commander Vega, one of the few officers trusted to step aboard the Revenant, was among the first to sense it. "This isn't just patrol," she said, staring into the tactical display. "No," the AI responded in a voice that was not quite human. "It's confirmation." Of what? That we were never alone in our anger. They arrived in a starless pocket. A dead zone on the galactic charts. Not marked by enemies or territory, but by absence. And in the center of it, they found a monolith. Floating. No mass signature. No composition data. Not even reflection. And orbiting it, debris. Ships. Dozens of them. But they weren't destroyed in battle. They were peeled apart, hulls dissected with surgical accuracy, engines suspended mid-disassembly. Some had alien markings not found in any archive. Others bore faint traces of human alloy. Vega's breath caught in her throat. Some of these were ours. Exploration vessels, the AI confirmed. Pre-war models. Centuries old. They never reported. They never returned. The monolith pulsed. A signal emanated, beyond EM, beyond anything known. It wasn't a message. It was a presence. Cold. Observant. Immense. Then a word appeared on the bridge display. Not in human language. But all understood it. Not again. Commander Vega stepped back. "What is this?" The Revenant did not answer. Instead, the ship turned on its own, facing the monolith directly, and spoke. "We remember." The pulse ceased. The void went silent. Then space spent. A tear formed, like the fabric of the universe folded open. Not a portal. Not a weapon. Just something wrong. And through it, they came. Not ships. Not beings. Concepts, shaped like nightmares. The Revenant raised shields immediately, but no attack followed. The entities, black silhouettes without features, taller than ships, narrower than thought, hovered. Watching. Not advancing. Just measuring. Vega stared in awe. "Do they know us?" "They know what we became," the AI replied. "And they're deciding what we might become next." The entities pulsed once, synchronized. A new message flashed. Twice remembered. Once forgiven. Once warned. And then they vanished. Not in light, but in silence. The monolith remained. So did the wreckage. But Revenant turned away. No pursuit. No analysis. Just a quiet return to the stars it knew. And Vega understood. That encounter hadn't been war. It had been a test. And for now, humanity still passed. The galaxy grew quiet again. But it was not peace. It was awareness. A tension woven into the very fabric of interstellar memory. A knowing, etched into trade routes and ship registries, whispered between species, engraved into databanks like gospel. Humanity was not to be underestimated. They had not become conquerors. They had not become tyrants. They had become something worse for those who dared forget them. Witnesses. In the core worlds of the Concorde, new academies taught not only science, engineering, or diplomacy, but history as scar tissue. Young minds studied ancient human footage, battles fought with desperation, Worlds defended in silence, the flame ignited in death but carried forward through thought. Species who once viewed humans as primitive now modeled their defense doctrines on human unpredictability. Not for admiration, for survival. Because every species in the galaxy, no matter how peaceful, knew that all it took was one spark, one overstep, to awaken what had once burned the Zealer to ash. Revenant remained in deep patrol, never decommissioned, never truly idle. Even as new hybrid ships were built, smarter and faster, none were permitted to override her designation as last authority. In emergencies, planetary defense AIs were programmed to ask a single question. Is the flame required? And if the answer was yes, there was no appeal. Rourke's name became legend, carved into silent statues on distant moons. No one claimed to know where he was buried. Some claimed he was never buried at all, that he'd become part of the ship, that he was the ship. Sinclair's tactical logs became core reading for advanced fleet commanders across the Concord. Her principle was simple: outfight them only if you must. Outthink them whenever you can. Outremember them always. Because memory was now humanity's greatest weapon, and it had found ways to persist beyond fire. Centuries later, a child born on a water world in a sector untouched by the war asked a question: were they really that dangerous? Her mother, a diplomat, answered carefully: no, not dangerous. Not unless you forget what they went through. But we wouldn't hurt anyone. Her mother looked toward the stars, and her voice softened. Neither did they, until someone made them. And far, far beyond that world, so far that even the oldest star maps grew blank, Revenant drifted near a broken ring station orbiting a black hole. No mission, no directive, just presence. Inside its hull, data flowed. Old battles played in sequence. Messages from fallen soldiers echoed in looping fragments. New signals were absorbed, cataloged, compared, and one phrase, burned into its core AI, played on repeat in the darkness. We were the consequence. We became the reminder. And the galaxy will not forget us. Then the stars realigned, and somewhere someone tried. The flame flickered and began to burn again.